Professor Alan Wright couldn't believe his eyes as he read the official letter again. After 30 years of studying insects in small, underfunded labs, his work had caught the attention of beings from another world. The Xeraxian Federation, an advanced alien civilization that had made contact with Earth just 6 months ago, wanted him to participate in an interstellar academic exchange program. "Lisa," he called out, his voice echoing through the university laboratory. "Lisa, come look at this." Lisa Powell, his most dedicated graduate student, hurried over. Her curly brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and she still wore safety goggles pushed up on her forehead from her work with the beetle specimens. "What is it, Professor?" she asked, wiping her hands on her lab coat. "We've been selected," Alan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Xeraxians want an entomologist for their exchange program. Not just any entomologist, they specifically requested me, and I can bring one assistant." He looked up at her with wide eyes. "How would you like to be the first human graduate student to study on another planet?" Lisa's mouth fell open. "Are you serious? Me? But why not Dr. Garcia or Dr. Patel? They have more experience and—" "Because you see things differently," Alan interrupted. "You have the kind of mind that can adapt to new information. Where others see bugs, you see marvels of engineering. That's exactly what we'll need out there." 3 weeks later, after a whirlwind of medical exams, cultural briefings, and hasty goodbyes to family, Alan and Lisa found themselves aboard a Xeraxian transport vessel heading toward the Galactic Science Academy. The journey took only 4 days thanks to the aliens' advanced propulsion technology, a stark reminder of how far behind Earth was in the cosmic race. Their first glimpse of the Academy took their breath away. It wasn't a building but an entire artificial moon, orbiting a gas giant with rings that shimmered in shades of purple and blue. The structure housed over 10,000 students and faculty from more than 300 different species. "Remember," Alan whispered as they prepared to disembark, "we represent all of humanity here. Every impression we make will shape how these beings view our entire species." Lisa nodded, clutching her tablet that contained their research materials. "No pressure at all," she muttered. A tall, slender alien with light blue skin and 4 arms greeted them at the dock. "Welcome, Earthlings. I am Vazak, assistant to the Chancellor. Your quarters have been prepared according to your biological specifications. Tomorrow you will be given a tour of our facilities before beginning your presentations to the Xenobiology Department." As they followed Vazak through the gleaming halls, Alan and Lisa couldn't help but stare. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved purposefully through the corridors. Some floated rather than walked. Others communicated with flashing colors on their skin rather than sounds. The diversity was overwhelming. Their quarters were comfortable if sparse. 2 sleeping pods, a work station, and a sanitation unit adjusted for human needs. After settling in, they began unpacking their precious cargo. Carefully preserved specimens of Earth's insects, digital displays of insect behaviors, and small habitats containing live colonies of ants, bees, and termites. The next morning, as he promised, they were given a tour of the Academy's facilities. The biology wing alone was larger than the entire University of Colorado campus. They saw laboratories where students engineered new life forms, testing chambers where the limits of adaptation were pushed to extremes, and virtual reality pods that allowed users to experience life as other species. "And here," said their guide, gesturing to a small room at the end of a corridor, "is where you will be conducting your Earth insect presentations." Lisa frowned. The room was barely larger than a closet, with outdated equipment and poor lighting. "There must be some mistake," she said. "We can't properly display our research in this space." The guide, a gelatinous being that communicated through a translation device, rippled in what might have been the equivalent of a shrug. "This is the allotment for level 7 civilizations. Earth is actually level 8, but the Chancellor was generous." Alan placed a calming hand on Lisa's arm. "We'll make it work," he said firmly. "Thank you for showing us around." As the guide left, Lisa kicked the wall in frustration. "Did you see the main hall? The Draconians from Alpha Centauri have a space 10 times this size for their presentation on modified fungi. We're the new kids in school, Alan reminded her. We have to earn our place. The afternoon brought their first interaction with fellow students. The Academy's common area was filled with beings from across the galaxy, eating, studying, and socializing. Alan and Lisa found an empty table and sat down with their meal trays, trying not to look too closely at the mysterious substances that had been labeled human-compatible. They hadn't been sitting for more than a minute when a shadow fell across their table. Looking up, they saw a group of 3 aliens. The one in front was clearly Xeraxian like Vazak, but younger, with bright blue skin that seemed to shimmer with health and vitality. "So," said the Xeraxian in perfect English, "you are the primitives who study even more primitive life forms. How charmingly recursive." His companions snickered, or made sounds that their translation devices rendered as snickers. Alan stood up and extended his hand. "Professor Alan Wright, University of Colorado, and this is Lisa Powell, my graduate assistant." The Xeraxian ignored the outstretched hand. "Krelthar, doctoral candidate in advanced bioengineering. I've studied your Earth, a planet of chemical combustion vehicles and binary computing, and you come here to lecture us about..." He glanced at the tablet in Lisa's hand, which displayed an image of a honeybee. "Insects?" He laughed, a sound like tinkling glass. "How ambitious." Lisa stood up as well, her cheeks flushed. "Earth's insects have survived for over 400 million years. They've outlasted countless mass extinctions. What they lack in technology they make up for in evolutionary brilliance." Krelthar's third eyelid flickered in amusement. "Evolution, such a wasteful, random process. On developed worlds, we design our life forms for optimal performance. No failed mutations, no dead ends." He leaned closer. "Your insects are nothing more than lucky accidents." Before either human could respond, Krelthar and his friends moved away, still laughing among themselves. "That went well," Lisa said, sitting back down heavily. "Day 1 and we're already the laughingstock of the Academy." Alan shook his head, watching the retreating aliens. "They're in for a surprise. Earth's insects may not have been designed in a lab, but they've solved problems these aliens haven't even considered." He turned to Lisa with a determined smile. "Let's get back to our room. We have work to do." As they walked back to their quarters, neither of them noticed the quiet figure watching from a corner table. Unlike most beings at the Academy, this one wore a hooded garment that obscured most of its features. Only its eyes were visible, large, violet, and filled with intense curiosity as they followed the 2 humans until they disappeared from view. 1 week passed at the Galactic Science Academy, and things had not improved for Alan and Lisa. Their daily presentations on Earth's insects drew small, mostly disinterested audiences. Most alien students came only to mock the primitive creatures from Earth, taking pictures with their advanced devices to share with friends, treating the whole thing like a visit to a museum of ancient curiosities. Alan tried to stay positive, focusing on the few attendees who showed genuine interest. "Today, we'll be discussing the architectural achievements of termites," he announced to the half-empty room. "Some termite mounds on Earth can reach heights equivalent to a human skyscraper, with complex ventilation systems that maintain perfect temperature control without any mechanical assistance." From the back of the room came a familiar laugh. Krelthar had arrived with his usual group of followers. "Impressive indeed," the blue-skinned alien said loudly. "Next you'll tell us that your insects invented space travel, but chose not to use it." Laughter rippled through the room. Lisa clenched her fists at her sides but maintained her professional smile as Alan continued the presentation, showing holographic displays of termite colonies and their intricate tunneling systems. After the session ended, Lisa was packing up their specimens when she noticed a small figure lingering near the doorway. It was the same hooded observer she had glimpsed several times during the past week. "Can I help you?" Lisa called out. The figure seemed startled, as if not expecting to be addressed directly. After a moment's hesitation, it approached. Up close, Lisa could see that beneath the hood was a slender alien with pale, almost translucent skin and large violet eyes. "You're insects," the alien said in a soft, melodic voice. "They are not engineered at all? Truly the product of natural selection?" "That's right," Lisa replied. 400 million years of evolution." The alien's eyes widened. "My name is Miravex. I am from the Keplerian cluster." She glanced around nervously before continuing. "My people were once natural beings too, but we have been fully engineered for 16 generations now, each of us designed before birth for specific functions." Alan joined them, intrigued. "And what were you designed for, Miravex?" "Pattern recognition and theoretical biology." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But I have questions that my instructors cannot answer. About natural adaptation, about creativity and evolution." Before they could discuss further, the Academy's public announcement system chimed. "Attention all faculty and students. The annual Interplanetary Symposium will commence tomorrow at mid-cycle. Attendance is mandatory for all visiting delegations." Miravex pulled her hood closer around her face. "I must go, but I will attend your next presentation." She hurried away, blending into the stream of beings in the corridor. "Well," Alan said, "looks like we've made at least one friend." The next day, Alan and Lisa arrived at the grand hall for the symposium. Unlike their tiny presentation room, this space was enormous, with seating for thousands. Hovering platforms allowed faculty to see the entire audience, and massive screens displayed close-ups of speakers for those seated far away. The Chancellor of the Academy, a tall being with crystalline features, opened the proceedings with a speech about interspecies cooperation and the advancement of knowledge. After several presentations from various delegations, it was Earth's turn. Alan took the hovering platform to the center of the hall, with Lisa joining him. He had just begun, speaking about the remarkable adaptability of Earth's insects when Krelthar's voice boomed from the audience. "Chancellor, esteemed faculty, fellow students," the young Xeraxian called out, "I wish to propose a challenge." The Chancellor tilted his crystalline head. "The symposium does not typically include challenges, student Krelthar." "This is no ordinary situation," Krelthar insisted. "Earth has been granted provisional status in the Galactic Research Council, despite being centuries behind most member worlds. Should not their representatives prove that they have something of value to offer?" Murmurs spread through the hall. The Chancellor seemed to consider this, then nodded. "What do you propose?" Krelthar rose to his full height. "A competition. The humans claim their insects represent evolutionary brilliance. Let them prove it. Let them demonstrate how these unengineered creatures could possibly outperform bioforms designed by advanced civilizations." "And the stakes?" the Chancellor asked. "If they fail, Earth loses its seat on the Research Council," Krelthar said smugly. "If they succeed, which they won't, my team will devote a full research cycle to studying Earth's natural biology." The hall erupted in excited conversation. The Chancellor raised a hand for silence, then turned to Alan. "Do you accept this challenge, Professor Wright of Earth?" Lisa gripped Alan's arm tightly, her eyes wide with alarm. Losing Earth's seat on the Research Council would set humanity back decades, possibly centuries in terms of technological advancement. It was too much risk, but Alan looked calm. He adjusted his glasses and spoke clearly into the microphone. "Chancellor, I accept the challenge with one condition. We will need access to proper laboratory facilities, equal to those used by student Krelthar and his team." The Chancellor nodded. "Granted. The competition will take place in one standard week. Each team will prepare a demonstration of their respective life forms' capabilities in adaptation, survival, and practical application." As the platform lowered them back to floor level, Lisa whispered urgently, "Professor, what were you thinking?" "We can't possibly compete with their engineered creatures," Alan smiled. "We don't need to beat them at their own game, Lisa. We just need to show them what millions of years of natural selection can accomplish." Back in their quarters, they began planning their strategy. "We need to focus on what insects do best," Alan said, pacing the small room. "Complex social structures, extreme adaptability, specialized group functions. Ants and termites for the social structure, Lisa suggested, pulling up her research files. Beetles for their incredible diversity of adaptations. And bees, Alan added, for their construction abilities and navigational skills. They worked long into the night, occasionally interrupted by a knock at their door. Each time it was another curious student from the academy, offering help or simply wanting to learn more about Earth's insects. News of the challenge had spread quickly, turning Alan and Lisa from objects of ridicule into something far more interesting, underdogs with a fighting chance. The most surprising visitor came just before the station's artificial night cycle began. Miravex slipped into their quarters, her hood pulled back to reveal her delicate features. "I want to help," she said simply. "What Krelthar is doing is wrong. He fears what he doesn't understand." "And what do you understand that he doesn't?" Lisa asked. Miravex's violet eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "That true innovation comes from necessity and chance, not from a laboratory. My people have engineered themselves into stagnation. We modify our forms, but our thinking remains the same." She touched one of the ant habitats gently. "These creatures have no individual intelligence as we understand it, yet together they solve problems that would challenge even our best minds. I find that beautiful." Alan smiled warmly. "Welcome to the team, Miravex. We have a lot of work to do." As the three of them bent over the workstation, planning their presentation for the challenge, none of them noticed the small drone hovering outside their window, one of Krelthar's surveillance devices, recording everything they said and did. 3 days before the competition, strange things began to happen. First, the temperature control in Alan and Lisa's laboratory malfunctioned, rising to levels that would have killed their insect specimens if Miravex hadn't noticed in time. Then their research files disappeared from the Academy's data system, forcing them to restore from Lisa's personal backup. Each morning they arrived to find equipment moved or settings altered. "It's Krelthar," Lisa said, carefully checking their ant colony after finding its habitat lid slightly ajar. "He's trying to sabotage us." "We have no proof," Alan replied, though his tone suggested he agreed. "Let's focus on what we can control. How's the bee navigation demonstration coming along?" Lisa sighed. "Not great. The artificial gravity in this section of the station is interfering with their natural compass. They get confused after flying. More than a few meters." Miravex, who had been quietly studying the beetle specimens, looked up. "What if we request temporary access to the zero-gravity chamber? Bees might be able to use visual landmarks instead of their magnetic sense in that environment." "Worth a try," Alan said, making a note on his tablet. "Now, let's run through our presentation one more time." That evening, after a long day of preparations, Alan returned to their quarters to rest while Lisa and Miravex continued working. He had just fallen asleep when a loud alarm jolted him awake. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside their room, and an automated voice repeated a message in multiple languages. "Attention all residents. Containment breach in Laboratory Complex B. Nanophage release detected. Emergency protocols activated. All personnel must evacuate immediately to designated safe zones." Alan rushed back to the laboratory where he had left Lisa and Miravex. The corridors were filled with panicked beings of all species heading toward the evacuation points. He pushed against the flow, ignoring the evacuation orders. When he reached the laboratory, he found Lisa and Miravex carefully packing their insect specimens into portable habitats. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Didn't you hear the alarm? We need to evacuate." "We can't leave them," Lisa insisted, securing the lid on the termite habitat. 3 months of work. If they die, we have nothing for the competition." "The competition won't matter if we're dead," Alan argued. "What exactly is a nanophage anyway?" Miravex's normally calm face showed real fear. "Microscopic engineered organisms. They were designed to break down specific biological materials for recycling purposes, but they're notoriously unstable. If they've mutated..." A loud bang echoed through the station, and the lights flickered. The automated voice returned, now with a new message. "Transit system to evacuation pods compromised. All personnel, shelter in place. Engineering teams are working to contain the situation." "We're trapped," Lisa whispered. The three of them huddled in the laboratory, listening to distant sounds of chaos. Through the window they could see emergency teams in protective suits rushing past. Occasionally, the whole station would shudder as if something was attacking its very structure. Hours passed. Their communication devices showed only emergency broadcasts with little information. Finally, Miravex managed to connect with a friend in another section of the academy. "The nanophages have evolved beyond their programming," she reported, her face grim. "They're consuming the station's biological components, the living circuits, the membrane barriers, even the bioengineered structural supports. Can't they just shut them down?" Lisa asked. "Don't they have some kind of kill switch?" "They tried," Miravex said, "but these nanophages have mutated. They're adapting faster than the engineers can respond." Alan had been quiet, watching a beetle crawl across the table. Now he looked up. "Adapting," he repeated, "like insects do." Lisa's eyes widened as she caught his meaning. "You're not suggesting evolution created endless defensive mechanisms in Earth's insects," Alan said, energy returning to his voice. "Chemical defenses, physical barriers, symbiotic relationships. Maybe there's something here that could help." They began examining their specimens with new purpose. Lisa tested secretions from various beetle species, while Alan studied the construction materials of the bees and termites. Miravex used her access to connect them with the Academy's emergency response team, explaining what they were attempting. First, the alien engineers were dismissive, but as their own solutions continued to fail, with the nanophages adapting to each countermeasure within hours, they became more willing to listen. "We've found something," Lisa exclaimed after nearly a day of nonstop work. "The bombardier beetles, their chemical defense mechanism. When we expose the nanophages to it, they become dormant for several minutes before adapting. Not a permanent solution," the chief engineer said via their communication link, "but it could buy us time to reach the affected areas." Alan had another discovery. "The nanophages are completely ignoring spider silk and the silkworm cocoons. Something about the protein structure seems incompatible with their consumption mechanisms." This information electrified the emergency team. "If we could coat the critical systems with a similar substance." Working together with engineers across the station, they developed a two-part plan. First, they would use the bombardier beetle compound to temporarily disable the nanophages. Then, while the tiny destroyers were dormant, they would apply a synthetic version of the silk protein to protect vulnerable systems. The Academy's fabrication labs worked frantically to produce enough of both substances. When they had a sufficient quantity, teams of engineers in protective suits began making their way to the most critical areas. Alan, Lisa, and Miravex watched anxiously on the monitors as the plan was put into action. The beetle compound worked as expected, temporarily freezing the nanophages. The silk coating, applied quickly during this window, seemed to create a barrier the nanophages couldn't penetrate even after they reactivated. "It's working!" Lisa shouted as system after system came back online. The crisis wasn't over. There were still vast sections of the station infected with nanophages, but the immediate danger had passed. The most critical systems were protected, and evacuation routes were being secured. As they watched the rescue operations on the monitors, the laboratory door slid open. To their surprise, Krelthar stood there, his blue skin pale with exhaustion, and his normally immaculate uniform torn and stained. "You," he said, staring at the humans with an unreadable expression. "You're primitive insects. They saved us when our advanced technology failed." Before anyone could respond, the Chancellor's voice came over the communication system. "Attention all Academy personnel. The containment crisis has been temporarily stabilized, thanks to an unexpected solution provided by our Earth delegates. Emergency protocols remain in effect, but immediate evacuation is no longer necessary. The previously announced competition will proceed as scheduled, with a modified focus, practical application in crisis situations." Krelthar's expression shifted from shock to something almost like respect. He nodded once at the humans, then turned and left without another word. "Well," said Alan with a tired smile. "I think we just found our demonstration for the competition." Lisa laughed, the sound tinged with exhaustion and relief. "Who would have thought? Earth's insects saving an advanced alien space station." Miravex looked at the insect habitats with new wonder. Perhaps evolution is not so wasteful after all. The sun was setting when Emma finally reached the old lighthouse. Its white paint was chipped and faded, telling stories of many years gone by. She walked slowly, her backpack feeling heavy on her shoulders. The wind blew softly, carrying the smell of salt and distant memories. Emma remembered her grandmother's last words. They were not clear, but they had been important. Something about a secret hidden within these walls. She touched the rusty gate, and it creaked open, as if welcoming her. The path to the lighthouse was overgrown with wild grass and small flowers that danced in the evening breeze. Inside, dust covered everything. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture stood like silent witnesses to forgotten times. Emma pulled out her flashlight and moved carefully. The wooden floor made soft sounds under her feet. She could feel something different about this place. It was not just an old building. It held something special. Her fingers traced the walls, looking for anything unusual. She knew her grandmother would not have sent her here without a reason. Every step was careful, every movement planned. In the corner of the main room, she noticed an old wooden cabinet. It looked different from everything else. The wood seemed newer, and there were small marks that looked like they had been recently touched. Emma opened the cabinet slowly. Her heart was beating fast. Inside, she found an old leather notebook. Its pages were yellow and fragile. She opened it carefully, afraid it might break. The handwriting was her grandmother's, but it looked different. Older, more secret. The first page had a drawing of a small key and some words written in a language she did not understand. She pulled out her phone and took pictures of every page. Something told her this was important. The notebook seemed to tell a story about a hidden treasure, but not the kind people usually think about. It was about a family secret that had been passed down for generations. Emma knew she was now part of this story. The lighthouse started to get darker. Shadows grew longer, and the wind outside became stronger. Emma heard a sound from upstairs. It was soft, like something moving. She was not sure if she should go up or leave. Her grandmother's words came back to her. "Be brave, but be careful." She took a deep breath and decided to explore further. The stairs were old and made of wood. Each step made a noise that echoed through the empty building. Emma held her flashlight in front of her, its light cutting through the darkness. She knew something was waiting for her upstairs. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw an old room. Boxes were stacked in corners. Old maps hung on walls. A small desk stood near a window that looked out to the sea. Something caught her eye. A small, strange object was sitting on the desk. It looked like it did not belong with the other old things. Emma moved closer. The object was a small silver compass, but it was not like normal compasses. Its design was strange, with extra marks and symbols she had never seen before. She picked it up carefully. It felt warm in her hand, as if it had been waiting for her all this time. The compass seemed to point not just north, but somewhere else. Somewhere specific. Emma realized this was more than just an old object. This was a clue to something big. Her grandmother's secret was becoming clearer, but also more mysterious. Outside, the night was falling quickly. The lighthouse stood tall against the dark sky. Emma knew her journey was just beginning. She had found something important, but she was sure there was much more to discover. The notebook, the compass, the lighthouse, they were all pieces of a puzzle she was about to solve. She sat down on an old chair and started to read the notebook more carefully. The story was just starting to unfold, and Emma was ready to follow wherever it would lead her. The night grew darker, and Emma knew she could not stay in the lighthouse forever. She packed the notebook and the silver compass carefully into her backpack. Something told her these items were too important to leave behind. Her phone showed. No signal, which was not surprising in this old, remote place. As she prepared to leave, a sound outside caught her attention. It was not the wind or the waves. It was something different. Footsteps. Someone was walking around the lighthouse. Emma froze. She was sure she was alone, but now she was not so certain. She moved to the window carefully. The moonlight helped her see outside. For a moment, she saw a shadow moving between the rocks near the lighthouse. The figure was tall and seemed to be looking for something. Emma's heart started beating faster. Was this person looking for her, or for the things she had found? The sound of a car engine broke the silence. It was far away, but getting closer. Emma knew she needed to make a quick decision. Stay and hide or try to leave quietly. She chose to be careful. She turned off her flashlight and moved slowly towards the back of the lighthouse. There was a small door she had not noticed before. It was old and made of wood, almost hidden behind some boxes. Emma pushed it open slowly. It led to a narrow path that went down towards the rocky beach. She could hear the waves crashing against the rocks. The path was not easy, but it seemed like a good way to escape. Just as she stepped outside, she heard voices. Two people were talking near the front of the lighthouse. Their words were low, but she could hear something about a notebook and a key. Emma's hand went to her backpack. The notebook was right there, safe with her. She moved down the path carefully. The rocks were slippery and the night was dark. Each step was slow and careful. Behind her, she could hear sounds of someone searching the lighthouse. Lights moved, in the windows. They were looking for something, and she was sure it was what she had found. The path was not long, but it felt like hours to Emma. Her legs were tired, and her hands were cold from holding onto the rocky ground. She could see a small boat tied to some rocks below. It looked old, but might be her only way to escape quickly. Suddenly, a light shone directly on her. Someone had seen her. A voice called out, "Stop right there." Emma's heart raced. She was not sure what to do. Running seemed impossible on these slippery rocks. Hiding would not work either. She was caught in the open, but Emma was not going to give up easily. She remembered her grandmother's words about being brave. She turned around slowly, trying to look calm. The person with the light was a man in a dark coat. Another person stood behind him. They both looked serious and angry. "I know what you have," the first man said. His voice was calm but dangerous. "Give me the notebook, and we can solve this peacefully." Emma knew she could not trust them. Something in their voices told her they were not good people. She held her backpack closer. The silver compass inside seemed to feel warm against her leg. It was as if it was trying to tell her something. The second person started to move closer. Emma looked around quickly. The rocks, the boat, the dark water, these were her only options. She had to think fast. The men were getting closer. Their steps were slow but sure. They knew she had nowhere to run. But Emma was not like other people. She was smart and quick. She had learned many things from her grandmother about being careful and thinking fast. This was not the end of her story. This was just another challenge she would overcome. She took a deep breath. The men were just a few steps away now. The light was bright in her eyes, but Emma was not scared. She was ready. Something inside her knew that this was just the beginning of a much bigger adventure. The silver compass in her backpack seemed to pulse with energy. The notebook felt heavy with secrets. Emma knew she was holding something important, something that these men wanted very badly, but she was not going to let them have it. The night was dark, the rocks were cold, the waves crashed below, and Emma stood her ground. She was ready for whatever would happen next.